Welcome back to the Jameson Files. I'm your host, Carrie Weber. Thank you so much for being with us and being a part of our Jameson Files community. However you may be participating in the community, I want to thank you for doing so. You may be watching us live on Facebook at this moment, or perhaps you're listening to us wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're wondering how to find us, just search out the Jameson Files wherever you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or you can find us on YouTube or right here on the Jameson Facebook page. We want to encourage you to invite your colleagues and peers to join us here in the Jameson community. Our goal is to bring you education, resources, experts on topics that are going to help you in your pursuit of your ideal practice vision or your ideal professional vision, wherever you are in your professional life. I am so pleased today to have a colleague, a friend, an expert in her field. Kathrine Eitel Belt is here with us to talk about an area that is probably always going to have a place of need for refinement, for development, for any of us that are dental professionals or professionals in whatever career path you're in, especially when you are a leader in your career. For us in the dental community, you are likely finding yourself in what Kathrine calls courageous conversations on the regular, whether that's with your patients or with your team or teammates. How we communicate, the effectiveness of how we communicate, is something that we at Jameson have believed in, the intentional development for us in our careers. We believed in that from the very beginning, and that I think is where, Kathrine, we connect on such a deep level, is our belief in developing our communication skills and entering in these courageous conversations, feeling more equipped so that we can have a successful conversation that is healthy and helps us all move forward in whatever the scenario is. So, Kathrine, I want to thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, it's my honor. What a fun thing this is to come together with you, Carrie, and the Jameson community, because I know your commitment for so long around leadership and communication and the importance of that. I mean, everything happens through communication, everything. And so, what could be more important than that? And we didn't come out of the womb, knowing how to do this always at the highest level. And most of us didn't take a class in school, and many of us, you, I think, might have been an exception, but many of us didn't learn it at home. We didn't have a great example at home. And so if we didn't, which is really common, and we didn't take a class in school, it's not surprising that we're now sort of in the middle of a team and an industry, a community where people have just come to this sort of helter-skelter, and they're doing the best they can. And it just turns out that there's a simple, fairly straightforward and easy way to upgrade these skills and get a lot better results really quickly. So like you guys, we're on a mission to spread this word that there are some systematic ways you can approach these hard conversations, or what we've in the past deemed as hard conversations. They can actually go much easier. And surprisingly enough, you can actually get to a place where you look forward to those conversations. It's very hard to believe in the beginning, but it's true that you can actually welcome them because you have some skills that will likely lead this conversation to success. So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and Kathrine, are we in a season where we both believe that our communication skills are a pivotal piece to relationships, to team building, to the relationships with our patients. But now more than ever, I feel like the ability or inability to communicate is making such a difference one way or another for practices and practice leaders. Are you finding that as well?
For sure. I think we're societally in that space. Just turn on the news and you'll see, most people struggling to have a civil, respectful, successful conversation when their perspectives differ or their opinions differ. So we're surrounded by it, even in our society, certainly in our industry and at a local level with our community, with our practices and with our families. And so there couldn't be a better time to give this a little attention. Here's some statistics. We talk to a lot of people that say, yeah, well, I know it's important, but I've got to really work on my scheduling systems, or I've got to work on my insurance billing systems. And of course, all those are important to running a successful practice. Right. It seems as though they often pigeonhole conflict resolution skills or these courageous conversation skills as sort of a soft skill. It's kind of nice to have, but not essential. But we have found some research that really shines a light on how taking care of this and giving this training to your teammates actually has a direct effect on the bottom line. So one of the studies that we looked at showed that most employees in the United States, the vast majority, are spending anywhere up to 4 hours a week either thinking about conflict, worrying about it, being agitated by someone, or actively embroiled in the actual conflict, which adds up to 2 weeks a year. So if you multiply that across all the employees you have, what would it look like if you could get 2 weeks of productivity back from every employee in your practice, where those thoughts were not on conflict, they were not on worrying about it or actually having the argument, but they were actually dedicating those hours thinking about their job performance, thinking about creative solutions to the challenges in the practice, to interfacing with your patients at a high level. So it's robbing us of productivity. That's number one. But it gets worse. Also, managers, it said, were spending 40% of their time helping others on the team to solve issues that they should be able to solve themselves. So imagine 2 weeks a year per employee plus 40% of your manager's time back in terms of productivity. I think that has a direct effect on the bottom line. So, and most of it is just that they just don't have the simple skills. That's all. It's a really easy fix if we can get these skills to I think at first our leadership level, and then ultimately to the entire team. Mm-hmm.
I could not agree more wholeheartedly with you, because it does start at that leadership level, that just mirroring the behavior and the way that healthy communication looks is such a powerful training tool, really, in helping others on your team learn this is how healthy communication takes place in this work culture that we're a part of. But also we hear it time and time again, doctors, practice managers, that really it's not the dentistry that's burning them out. It's not the work that they've chosen to do clinically that's burning them out. It's the drama. It's the conflict. Yeah. It's the management. It's those interpersonal aspects of the work that you cannot avoid. you can't. And so not being equipped and having the tools to build a practice culture that makes room for healthy communication, and then engaging in that type of healthy communication, that is the most draining, the most stressful, and one of the key elements of burnout that our doctors and practice leaders typically come to you or come to us suffering from on a regular basis. So, Kathrine, tell me some of the tools perhaps that you have. Are there some certain aspects that we could touch on today for those that maybe this is ringing their bell? They're saying, yes, this is the hard part. This is what I struggle with. I am doing way more than 4 hours a week worrying about these conflicts. What are some of those tools that you encourage people to work on?
Well, you opened the door to this beautifully. I would say that really depends on your position. So if you are an owner, the first tool that you have, and I know at Jameson Management, you guys do a lot of assisting owners with their visioning process and determining their values. And I know their coaches give a lot of play to this topic, and sometimes I think it falls on deaf ears, like, oh yeah, we've been down that road. But let me just really tightly tie it to creating the culture that is fun to walk into, is operating at a really mature, highly mature level. Imagine what life would feel like. Imagine what work would feel like if that was the case. So that starts with in my opinion, that starts with the owner or owners claiming a vision, a cultural vision of how we are going to be on this ride together, and making an invitation to the team to come on board this train and where it's going and how we're going to behave on the journey to this destination. So we have to set that culture for people communicating at, it's really a standard. It's like a standard. We have, as an owner, we have to say, you can work anywhere you choose, especially in today's market. You can work anywhere you choose. If you want to accept our invitation to work here, and we hope you will, we want you to know what you're signing on for. What you're signing on for is a high expectation that all of us from the top down will learn the skills we need to communicate at a really high and very mature level, which means we handle our disagreements. We state effectively what we need and why. We collaborate together at a very high level, and we're all coming into conversations expecting the best of each other, anticipating finding great solutions, and collaborating at that level. So that's the expectation, and that's the invitation. Now, owners may need to look to a level of management to provide those skills. So Carrie, I always say that when people aren't doing what we want them to do, it most of the time comes down to 4 reasons. And they're really, I like to come at the disconnect in results and behavior in this order. So the first one is, I ask myself, are they clear? So someone's not doing or performing, how I would like them to. They're not doing something I need them to do. And so I ask myself, are they clear about the expectation? Are they clear about what I'm needing? And often we think we've been clear, but really the only way we know is if that person can, repeat it back to us in a way that we find correct. So unless we've tested it, we really don't know if they have clarity around the ask. If they're clear, then the second piece is, are they trained? Do they have the skills? So a lot of times an owner or leadership team can make the cultural expectation, the cultural standard of growth and high level communication, mature communication really clear. And someone could repeat it back that if you work on our team, that's the expectation. We solve our own issues. And when we can't solve our issues and we take it to management, we're prepared for them to ask us what we've already done. What have we already tried? And to be open. So if they can state that back, then we have to ask ourselves, have we given them the tools? And most practices haven't. And it's okay. You are where you are, but you can get them, and you can get them really, really quickly. So, but let's say they're clear and they're trained, but we still aren't getting what we need. The next one I always look at is, are they capable? Do they have either the intellect to do this task? Do they have the physical capability to do this task? Are they capable? And so in this case, sometimes do they have the emotional stability to do this task? And if it's yes, yes, and yes to those 3, then we come to, are they willing? There are people who don't agree that this is the way to go. They don't agree that, and so they basically dig in their heels and they do something different just because they aren't willing to do it our way. And so, but often we go straight to, are they willing? And before we check, are they clear? Are they trained? Have I, from a leadership standpoint, have I checked those boxes and given them every chance to be successful before we get to the are they willing conversation? So that's, I think, really helpful from an ownership and leadership. We have to set this vision, and if you want your people to not get stuck in their mistakes and not to move past mistakes, then we have to model everything we want. And so imagine an owner standing before their team saying, it occurs to me that until now, I've been operating at one level of leadership and one level of clarity about what I need and want. And I've been frustrated. I've been frustrated with how we're behaving. I've been frustrated with how we're communicating and how we're operating as a team. And I realize that all of that points back to me. And so starting today, I want you to know I take full responsibility. And from this day forward, I'm no longer going to ignore, participate in, tolerate, pretend. I'm going to state what I need. I'm going to give training for the skills we need to do it. And I'm going to step into a whole new level of leadership. I'm no longer going to be frustrated. I'm not taking it home to my family. I'm not going to walk around here where you all know I'm frustrated. I'm not going to do that anymore. We're going to be real clear up front. And I apologize if, for the past. I own it. And I want you to know that I take responsibility for it. And starting today, I'm stepping into a whole new level of leadership. So I want to clarify for you all today how this is going to look going forward, and the training I'm going to provide for it, and the commitment I have to it. When someone stands up and claims a vision, like a cultural vision like that,
yes,
it's amazing what the team will forgive. It's amazing what they will step into, this sort of new future. And it's really amazing. And, I think that vulnerability and transparency on a leader's part is really, we say around here it's sexy, but
I love it. I love it.
But I think it's essential if you want your people to be transparent, and if you want them to, you've got to model what that looks like, that we can still be strong and still acknowledge that we're on the journey too. So that's one for owners. For managers, that's such a tough position. You're in that sandwich position. You've got someone to report, an owner to report to, but you also have this team that's looking to you for guidance. And I think we've promoted a lot of people into team leadership positions because they were a good hygienist, or they were a good assistant, or a good administrator. And we promote them based on their clinical skills into these positions, but these positions require a whole new set of skills, and we often don't give them the tool. I think we lose a lot of who could be great managers and great leaders because we don't equip them with the skills, and they become frustrated. So I would say teaching them a system, not only to deal with conflict, but to teach conflict. Often what we find with office managers is they're the door everyone walks into to complain and groan and, whine. And there's a lot of that. It becomes very exhausting for a manager. So we want to give the work back to our people. And we train managers to hand that work gently back to where it belongs, so that they're actually committed to growing their people. And again, if that's been claimed in a visionary statement that what we're going to be focused on is everyone growing their skills, then we're able to hand that work back to them. Not to say, don't come to me again, but to say, okay, what I want to do is coach you on how you can begin to resolve this instead of me resolving it for you. So it's, giving the man a fish versus teaching them to fish, right? It's that same idea.
Right.
So that becomes more of coaching skills. And for frontline people, and anyone really, we have a system. We have a 4-step. Well, actually, I would say, broadly looking at it, it's 2 parts. One is mindset, and the second is skill set. And within mindset, there are 3 tools that we use for helping to recognize where we are with our mindset and shifting to a stronger one. And then in the skill set, we have a 4-step process for the actual conversation. And we're really happy that they're simple, because in conflict in particular, if you've got a 17-step process, you're not going to remember it. You're barely going to remember the 4 steps. So
That's right.
we need it to be simple, and I'm happy to share those if you want to explore those a little bit. But, it comes down to, as you know, Carrie, leadership and communication is an inside out job. And so we have to start with our own mindset, even though we feel like if they would just stop doing this, or if they would start doing that, our fingers are always pointed out in conflict, always. But usually the gold in this is here, inside here. So that's where we start first. Yeah.
I think so much of what you said is so spot on. And I loved your statement of saying, we want to be about the business of creating a mature culture. That we want to be intentionally building that. And often what you find is that the readiness comes even without the skills yet, because owners or the leaders, they recognize they're stuck in something, but they avoid these conversations, either number one, because they don't know how to enter into them, or they feel like the behaviors or the issues or whatever have been allowed for so long that there's a fear of how this is going to be received by the team. And the picture you just painted is so perfect in terms of, we must as leaders set expectations clearly. And today is good, now is good to do this. And from this point forward, you have a standard, as you said, you have a standard to hold people accountable from. So the past is the past. And from this point forward, here's where we're going. Here's what's expected. Here's how we all are going to be measured in terms of how we work together, how we perform, how we communicate, everything else. And I love your steps of, are they clear? Are they trained? Are they capable? Are they willing? And how it is a building block. And if doctors or leaders are afraid, do I even have anything that I'm standing on right now that is something I need to engage in a conversation about? Just walking through those questions helps you know where to land and what needs to be done, what decisions need to be made, or what steps need to be taken. And I think that was just so beautifully communicated. So, Kathrine, perhaps maybe give us a little bit, in terms of the mindset piece, what you mean by that, and then tell us where they can find, anyone that's listening could find information to dig deeper on the steps that you work on with leaders and team members.
Yeah. Well, imagine if you could, teach your team and yourself how to step onto, first, how to recognize what emotional platform you're standing on when you go to speak into conflict. And if it isn't a strong emotional platform, how to get yourself onto one before you speak. So we use this idea of the flow. It's one of our 3 core principles in mindset. And we have people imagine a river that represents all the good things in their life, all the love they want, all the money they want, all the relationships, all the promotions, all the good health, everything good in their life that they want, all the great employees they want to work for them, or great bosses they want to work for. It's all there, all the patience, and so I ask people, when you're in those moments in life where life is really working out, the kids are doing well, you pay your bills and there's money left over in the checkbook, and the team's working pretty well together, and your life is working pretty well, how do you feel? And they'll say, oh, I feel content, or I feel successful, I feel happy. But I say, also, would you agree that it's in those spaces that we feel the most generous, we feel the most forgiving, we feel the most optimistic? That's a place where we feel that way. And then I have them imagine on the sides of that are muddy banks around this river. And the muddy banks, of course, represent the opposite, the times in life where we go to pay the bills and there's not enough money in the checkbook, or we can't find the people we need to work for us, or those hard times. And so I ask people how they feel. We've all been in those times. How do we feel there? And they'll say, it's the opposite. I feel frustrated. I feel maybe angry, but I certainly don't feel as generous. I feel actually a sense of worry and lack. And scarcity, I feel pessimistic, I feel vulnerable, and all these things. So I ask people, if you were getting ready to use our 4-step framework to enter into a conversation you really want to have with someone, can you see how, if you're in the mud, if you're on that muddy bank where you're feeling pessimistic, frustrated, angry, all those things, how the conversation might be different, even if you use the framework, than if first you recognized you were in the mud, you moved yourself, you had the ability to move yourself into that flow, into a place where you felt more optimistic, less frustrated, you felt more benevolent and forgiving, and confident, really confident. When you spoke from there and used the framework from there, do you think the conversations would be different? And of course, all audiences we talk to or teams that we work with say, of course. And I say, well, then that's your first step. I could give you the framework first. The framework's really simple, surprisingly simple. But if you use it from the mud, it's not going to work. And you're going to blame the framework, and it's not the framework. Every time it will be you recognize, learning. This is like mindfulness. It's mindfulness. Yes. It's mindfulness of our state before we enter into this conversation. And we're not always taking the conversation to someone. Sometimes the conversation is marching down the hallway at us, shaking its finger at us, saying, I want to talk to you today before I go home, And sometimes the conversation lands in our lap. Either way, a really good communicator is going to internally check in. Immediately, internally check in. Am I in the mud? Am I in the flow? Or you could call it, it's just a metaphor for this emotional. Yeah. And so that's part of the other pieces are always asking yourself, what's my piece of this? What piece of this is my responsibility? Because there always is. Either we've missed something, we've been ignoring something, we've been tolerating something, we've been participating in something. We haven't had the skills to date to be able to do this. There's a piece of this that belongs to us. There's something we haven't been able to date to make clear. And when you own your piece, the whole conversation is different and better. It doesn't mean you own the whole thing. It just means you're always asking yourself, what piece of this is mine? And that's going into the conversation, making sure you're not speaking from a victim mentality. What piece do I own? And how can I stand in that so that we can both come from a place of contribution? So that's one. And then flow is second. And then third is we just have people begin to understand that we're all operating on what we call BS, which stands for belief systems, but it's about the same as everybody thinks that word means because it's all made up. Our beliefs are all, we make up a story. So everything that happens to us is neutral. The thing is neutral, but we give it meaning. And the rub is that we don't all give the same meaning to the same neutral event. So lots of examples of that. But the short story is really good communicators first of all, know that they have their own set of beliefs about what's good or bad or right or wrong or possible or impossible. But the other person's beliefs may be different. And so when you recognize that, number one, that's helpful. And secondly, really good communicators know how to poke some holes or challenge their current beliefs. And what that helps us do is ferret out what limiting beliefs are we holding. So for example, if you say, well, I'd like to talk to that person, but she never gets it and she never will. So when you get an awareness that, oh, I just recognized I'm holding a belief. I wonder, is there any evidence that she's changed in any other facet of her work? Is there any evidence that maybe if I came at it differently, she might offer a different response? Is there something that I could learn that could change the way she interacts with me? That's somebody recognizing they have a belief around this and poking some holes in it. And how you poke holes in it is you ask yourself really good questions, really interesting questions. So one of the things I'd love to offer to your community, we have a list of powerful questions and powerless questions. And we've been combining this list for decades, and we just added something recently to it. So we're always adding, what is a really powerful question we could ask ourselves and others that would really further a rich conversation, either internally with ourselves or externally with others. So I'm happy to share that list and have people put it up in their team rooms and, think about how they can recognize their beliefs and sort of bring down the walls of the limiting beliefs, because it's on the other side of those walls. If you think you already have the answer to a question, you stop asking the question. But when you start poking holes in that solid belief, sometimes there's opportunities, resources, ideas on the other side of that belief that you would never have access to unless you started asking some different questions. So those are some of the mindset pieces that we train on. And like I said, then we introduce our 4-step framework for actually having the conversation. And another tool I'm glad to share, because I know we have limited time. I mean, we teach this in, a multi-day workshop, but so 30 minutes is just really a quick conversation about the power of it. But we call it our support sheet, our Courageous Conversation support sheet. And on the left, it has these 3 pieces of mindset shifting. And on the right, it has the 4-step conversation framework. And I'm happy to share that with your listeners and viewers. I think it's a tool that literally could change the world. It can change conversations at an industry level. It can change conversations at a team level. And it can change conversations around your dinner table. The skills are exactly the same. And I'm writing a book on this right now, and I'm really on a mission to bring these skills to the world, because I think it absolutely positively impact our world today if we could communicate better in conflict.
Kathrine, so much great information, and I know I could listen to you for days, speak and share, and I know others are listening saying, what's the framework, or how do I find the questions she's talking about? So could you share with everyone listening how they can reach out to you to receive these very generous gifts you're offering, or to learn more about the courses that you teach for those deeper dives into communication?
Absolutely. So the best way to get the powerful questions and the Courageous Conversations support sheet is just to send us an email at info@lionspeak.net. Don't go to .com, because that's a winery. So if you want wine, go there. But if you want Courageous Conversations help, come to Lion, Lion, Speak, SPEAK.net, info@. And just put a Courageous Conversation support sheet and questions, and Kelly will get that out to you right away. And use it. Put it up in your team room. You use it at a team meeting. Talk to your team about it. Really simple, but I think it can be profound in how teams communicate together. If you're interested in taking a deeper dive, we do have a workshop, a Courageous Conversations virtual workshop. Our next one is in January of 22. It's the 18th through the 20th, and we have it 3 hours each morning. And so we learn mindset the first morning, skill set the second morning, and the third morning we just dedicate to, I do some demonstration. I let the group bring their biggest challenges, and I step into their voice and sort of prove that even though I don't know exactly what they're going to say, I don't know exactly what the issue is, which is how it is in real life. I want to prove that you don't have to, that the framework, you can trust it. And so I demonstrate several times, and then we put them into their own practice in some breakout rooms and give them some, a chance to kind of work out their comfort level with it before they take it back to their teams. So we'd love to have you. If you're interested, again, you can find those dates and registration on our website, lionspeak.net. And we have other workshops. We have a Train the Trainer workshop. So if your company is big enough to have internal trainers, I know we brought some of this work to Jameson management, and a lot of your trainers have come through. But I'm finding that some dental practices, especially if they have multi-locations, they are developing their own internal team, and they need some training skills, like how to teach their protocols. Let's say they are a Jameson client and they're using your protocols and systems to improve the practice. They've got to train, they've got to onboard new people, they've got to keep going back to their departments and training. And so we give them not content, but how do they take their current content and train it at a higher level so people really get mastery quicker with it. So that workshop is coming up in December. It's December 7th and 8th, and also virtual for that level 1 course. So just check the website out and you can see those courses. We no longer do practice management, but we really love contributing to the communication piece of how businesses run and how people get better.
Perfect resources, Kathrine. Thank you so much. They are such building block opportunities. I do encourage any of you that are listening, I hope you jotted that down, info@lionspeak.net, to request the resources that Kathrine's so generously offering, and visit their website at lionspeak.net to learn more about the courses and workshops that Kathrine provides, as well as other products and resources that may be available to you there. We fully agree with Kathrine that one of the biggest pillars that you need to and must invest time and effort into is that pillar of communication, for you with your team, for you with your patients, and as Kathrine said, for you at the dinner table. You won't regret it. It's time well spent. We've invested time with Kathrine, and it was time well spent for us, and I know it'll be the same for you. So Kathrine, thank you so much for your time today and for joining us here at the Jameson Files.
It was my pleasure.
And thanks to all of you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Until then, be well. We'll see you soon. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Jameson Files. Visit us online at jmsn.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play Music, or Spotify. Do you have questions or topics you'd like for us to answer or cover on the next podcast? Email us at podcast@jmsn.com.